Feeling a bit too stable lately? Is your trust in basic reality unshakably high? Well, have I got the podcast for you. Today we dive into the world of Eric Weinstein. He's a man with a doctorate in mathematical physics from Harvard. He's also a man who has not worked in academia for decades. Instead, he has become a professional media personality who specializes in weaving tales of grand conspiracies. He claims secret government cabals are destroying science. He says we are living in a managed reality. And of course, he's the only one brave enough to tell you about it. What makes this particularly entertaining is how Eric simultaneously holds himself in stratospheric regard while nursing the thinnest skin imaginable. He'll spend hours explaining how he's a misunderstood genius whose revolutionary ideas threaten the establishment, then in the same breath complain that shadowy forces are personally targeting him. Listen carefully for those moments when he's clearly talking about himself but dancing around it with elaborate third-person scenarios. You know, those hypothetical tales about brilliant outsiders who are unfairly persecuted by lesser minds. We will hear him claim the apocalypse is here, that peer review is a myth, and that the government sends a gaggle of idiots just to harass him personally. It's a masterclass in grandiose victimhood. Buckle up. It is going to be a bumpy ride through the paranoid landscape of the intellectual dark web. Let's start with the big picture. The really big picture. Host Stephen Bartlett asked a perfectly reasonable question. Is the world today uniquely tense, or is it just a matter of perspective? Eric Weinstein's response is not exactly measured. He finds the very question unbelievable, because for him it is not just a tense time, it is the end of the world as we know it.
So is this a particularly tense moment, or is it just the bias that I have because I've not been through these things before? Is there something different?
I can't even believe the question. You're looking at the end, man. This is the beginning. This is a slow rollout of a completely different world. We've all been in a completely artificially stagnant bubble for decades. My entire life up until now has been in a bubble.
You are looking at the end man. He says it with such casual certainty. There is no room for debate, no nuance, just the slow rollout of a completely different world. This is classic fear-mongering. It creates a sense of crisis that makes listeners more susceptible to extreme explanations. If the world is ending, then normal rules do not apply, and the person who tells you it is ending must have special insight. It is a perfect setup for a conspiratorial worldview. He dismisses the host's question as naive. This positions him as the wise elder who sees the grim reality others cannot. So if the world is ending, who is pulling the strings? How is this new reality being rolled out? Eric Weinstein has a name for it. He calls it managed reality. He connects Jeffrey Epstein, the media, and the CIA into one big network. A network designed to fool all of us. He claims we are all living in our own version of the Truman Show.
Jeffrey Epstein, who is not a disgraced financier, the newspapers that have always had a national interest component and have liaisons so that they can work with the CIA and the State Department and they do each other's bidding and scratch each other. This whole network is what I've called managed reality. We live in managed reality. We are all in some version of the Truman Show.
We are all in some version of the Truman Show. This is not a metaphor for media bias. He's being quite literal. He suggests a coordinated effort by newspapers and intelligence agencies to construct a false reality. This is a foundational belief for many conspiracy theories. It posits that official sources of information cannot be trusted. In fact, they are actively malicious. By invoking the Truman Show, he creates a powerful and simple image. It is an image of total control and deception. This makes any evidence that contradicts his worldview easy to dismiss. It is just part of the show. Let's drill down on one of his key examples for this managed reality, Jeffrey Epstein. According to Eric Weinstein, Epstein was not a financier. That was just a cover story. He claims to have met Epstein and immediately recognized him as a construct, a fake person created by some shadowy entity for some unknown purpose.
When the meeting was over, I immediately called my wife and I said, I have just met a construct. She said, what do you mean? I said, this person is not who they claim to be. Somebody has constructed this human being to be something that they are not, which is a hedge fund genius. Somebody who could understand the euro and the yen like nobody else. Bullshit. Not true.
I've just met a construct. Notice how this revelation comes through a conversation with his wife. Imagine being married to someone who calls you up from parties to announce they've uncovered secret government plots. "Honey, I've just met an intelligence asset disguised as a financier." Poor woman probably has to field these breathless conspiracy updates on a regular basis. He offers zero evidence for this, just his own gut feeling, his special insight. He claims Epstein was not a hedge fund genius. That part is probably true. But he leaps from not a genius to an artificial person created by a secret power. This is a classic conspiracy tactic. It takes a known truth or a public suspicion and inflates it into a grand secret plot. This reinforces his position as the lone truth teller. Now that we have established that reality is fake, let's move on to how they control knowledge. Science is a big target. How do you discredit decades of scientific consensus? You attack the process itself. Here Eric Weinstein claims that peer review, the cornerstone of modern scientific validation, is a complete myth. He says it is a recent invention designed to control scientists.
And it's very clear from the scholarship around it that it comes out of a period between 1965 and 1975, initiated by the Medicare Act, predicated on the need for editors for the journal expansion founded by Pergamon Press and Robert Maxwell. By 1975, there's a giant battle between the NSF and both fiscal and cultural conservatives against something called Man, A Course of Study, or MACOS, where peer review was born in a Utah clinic, came out of the medical literature because the federal government in 1965 with the Medicare Act picked up the need to pay for so many medical procedures. They wanted to say, why are we assigning this many medical procedures? The doctors circled the wagons and said, we will peer review each other. Then by 1975, the NSF was under the microscope, and they used peer review as a self-defense of last resort to say, we will be reviewing each other, right? Peer review is a myth.
Peer review is a myth. This is a breathtakingly bold claim. He throws out a bunch of names and dates. Robert Maxwell, the Medicare Act, the NSF. It sounds impressive and academic, but it is a gross misrepresentation of history. While the formal process of peer review has evolved, its philosophical roots go back centuries. Scientists have always shared and critiqued each other's work. He frames it as a conspiracy by doctors and government agencies to circle the wagons. This narrative serves one purpose: to dismantle public trust in the scientific method. If peer review is a corrupt sham, then any scientific finding he disagrees with can be dismissed without evidence. It is the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card for pseudoscience. So if peer review is a myth, what is the result? According to Eric Weinstein, it is the total stagnation of physics. He claims there has been a decades-long plot. A plot to make physicists stop caring about the actual physical world. He presents a recent visit to a physics department as his proof.
The top people in this physics department professed that they had no interest in the physical world, that they only cared about the mathematics that they were doing. And I just thought, you're in a theoretical physics group, and you profess openly that you have no interest whatsoever in the physical world. Well done. I don't know who you were. I don't know how you did it, but it took you 4 decades to get the physicists to stop caring about the physical world.
It took you 4 decades to get the physicists to stop caring about the physical world. He says this with a tone of begrudging admiration for the shadowy conspirators. This is another unfalsifiable claim based on an anecdote. We are supposed to believe that the top people in a physics department openly admitted they have no interest in physics. It is an absurd caricature, but it fits his narrative perfectly. The institutions are not just flawed, they are completely corrupted from the inside. The people in them have been brainwashed or coerced into abandoning their core purpose. Again, he is the only one who sees it. The conspiracy against physicists gets even darker. It is not just about making them lose interest in their work, it is about life and death. Eric Weinstein claims that physicists are the only profession in America with no free speech. He says a secret legal doctrine allows the government to execute them for just doing their job.
How many people on earth know that there's a doctrine that says physicists don't have free speech? We can execute you for doing your job. It's never been tested in the courts, and I hope that the Supreme Court will not allow that. But if we have a problem that is so serious in theoretical physics that it needs the world's largest exemption from free speech, We need to amend the Constitution.
We can execute you for doing your job. This is pure, undiluted fear-mongering. He is referring to the restricted data concept in the Atomic Energy Act of 1954. This law controls information related to nuclear weapons. It is extremely specific. It does not apply to all of physics. And the idea that it gives the government a free pass to execute physicists for discovering a new equation is beyond ludicrous. He presents this narrow historical law as a vast secret doctrine that muzzles an entire field of science. He even suggests the Constitution needs to be amended. This elevates his pet theory into a constitutional crisis. It is a masterclass in dramatic exaggeration. This alleged war on scientists is not just limited to physicists and secret laws. Eric Weinstein broadens the scope. He claims a secret squirrel club within the intelligence world actively targets and destroys the lives of America's best and brightest. Not just their careers, but their families and their mental health. Now, who could he possibly be talking about here?
When our secret squirrel club inside the intelligence world, and inside, in particular, covert operations, targets our own people who are not read into these programs for personal destruction, reputational destruction, mental destruction, economic destruction. We take our best people and we make fun of them, and we belittle them, and we destroy their families, their lives, their ability to earn. I have a very strong sense that you never destroy your best people.
We take our best people and we make fun of them and we belittle them and we destroy their families. The language here is incredibly emotive. It paints a picture of a nation devouring its own heroes. He offers no names, no specific cases, no evidence, just a vague assertion about a secret squirrel club. This is a common feature of deep state conspiracies. The enemy is powerful, shadowy and everywhere, while the victims are always our best people. This creates a strong sense of injustice and paranoia while flattering his audience. If you agree with him, you're one of the best people being targeted. But it's hard not to see Eric's personal grievances driving this conspiracy theory. Remember, this is a man whose pet theory, geometric unity, was widely criticized by actual physicists when he presented it. Rather than accepting that maybe his work had flaws, he's constructed an entire narrative where brilliant outsiders like himself are systematically destroyed by secret cabals. In Eric's world, legitimate scientific criticism becomes persecution by shadowy forces. It's a classic case of turning professional disappointment into a grand persecution complex. Honestly, it's hilariously transparent. So how does this secret squirrel club operate? What are their methods? Eric Weinstein introduces some spooky military jargon to explain it. He talks about the Human Terrain Project. He tells the host Stephen Bartlett that in this worldview, a popular podcaster like him is not a person. He is a strategic asset, a mountaintop to be captured.
Did you know what the Human Terrain Project is? Do you know about human terrain? You're a mountain, I'm a valley, and instead of war planners figuring out how do we use that valley to capture that mountaintop because it gives us an eagle's nest to snipe from or whatever, they say, okay, this is the second most powerful podcast in the world, second to Joe Rogan. How do we capture him?
Fuck. Leave me alone, please.
No, but that's what I'm trying to say. You're human terrain.
You are human terrain. The Human Terrain System was a real US Army program. It embedded social scientists with military units in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was controversial for many reasons, but Eric Weinstein rips it from its context. He applies it to domestic society. He turns it into a metaphor for how a shadowy they views all influential civilians. The goal is to make the listener feel like a target in a secret war. When he says, how do we capture him about the host, it is designed to be chilling. It transforms media and public discourse into a battlefield. Next up in the lexicon of control is the concept of pre-bunked malinformation. This sounds complicated, but Eric Weinstein has a very simple definition. It is the government's secret weapon for destroying truth-tellers like himself. He redefines common terms to fit his conspiracy.
Nobody knew the term pre-bunked malinformation. Do you know what pre-bunked malinformation is? Malinformation is information we don't want to get out. Technically, people try to pretend that it's information that will be misinterpreted, but really it's real stuff that is deleterious to the narratives that we're trying to push forward and what we're trying to do. And pre-bunked means discredited. So we know what debunked, we have to debunk disinformation. We get that. But you didn't know that we had to pre-bunk malinformation, which is we have to destroy truth tellers.
This is a brilliant piece of rhetorical judo. He takes real terms used by researchers who study disinformation and flips them on their head. Malinformation is generally defined as information that is based on reality but used out of context to mislead or cause harm. Pre-bunking is a strategy to preemptively expose people to weakened forms of misinformation to build their resistance. But in Eric Weinstein's world, malinformation is simply real stuff the powerful do not want you to know. And pre-bunking means to destroy truth tellers. He creates a straw man and then valiantly knocks it down. He's not arguing against the real concepts. He's arguing against his own sinister definitions. What about UFOs? Surely they fit in here somewhere. Of course they do. The host asks why the government would fake UFO sightings. Eric Weinstein explains it is all part of the grand strategy. It is a cover for secret military tech, or it is a psychological operation to trick our enemies.
Why would they fake the UFOs though? What was that distraction?
You ever
for?
seen the B-2 bomber?
Yeah.
What if you saw that before we were ready to say it existed?
Yeah, you'd think it was a UFO or something.
So wouldn't it be better if we had a UFO story ready to go when we had cool aerospace?
Oh, okay. So you're saying they're working on something which they didn't want you to know. So
What's more, what if we convinced China or Russia or Iran that we had incredible powers that they don't have? Then they might be very reluctant to strike us. Or they might waste a tremendous amount of money developing anti-gravity technology when there's no such thing.
Wouldn't it be better if we had a UFO story ready to go? He presents this as a clever strategic choice. This is a classic conspiracy theory move. It explains away a lack of evidence or strange phenomena by folding it into the conspiracy itself. Nothing is random. Everything is a plot. If the government denies UFOs, it is a cover-up. If there are strange sightings, it is a government psyop. Every possible outcome confirms the original belief. It is a closed loop of logic. There is no way to disprove it because every piece of data can be reinterpreted to fit the narrative. After revealing all these world-shattering secrets, what is Eric Weinstein's reward? According to him, it is harassment, but not just from random people on the internet. He believes the government itself sends a gaggle of idiots to attack him online.
The scholarship is clear as day. I can't keep going on the world's largest podcast saying everything that can be Googled and figured out and just constantly have as my reward that the government refuses to have a conversation with me and sends its gaggle of idiots to harass me.
You think it's doing that? It's sending a gaggle of...
Yes, I do. I think that some of them are actual idiots who just enjoy causing problems. But I think more than anything, we have a real problem.
It is sending a gaggle of idiots. This is a textbook example of what some call conspiratorial narcissism. He cannot simply be wrong. He cannot just have critics. Any disagreement or criticism must be part of the conspiracy. It is a state-sponsored harassment campaign. But there's something else going on here. Eric seems genuinely hurt that the government hasn't offered him a position. He's watched other members of the so-called intellectual dark web get advisory roles and government appointments, and he's been left out in the cold. The self-aggrandizement is off the charts. He positions himself as too dangerous for the establishment to engage with directly. This serves two purposes. First, it insulates him from any legitimate critique. You're not a peer pointing out a flaw in his logic. You're part of the gaggle of idiots sent by the government. Second, it reinforces his status as a martyr. He's so dangerous to the establishment that they must deploy assets to silence him. Any criticism of his insane conspiratorial worldview becomes evidence of a planned, directed attack against him personally. It is a self-aggrandizing victim narrative that makes him the hero of his own persecution fantasy. Finally, after diagnosing the world with a terminal case of conspiracy, what is the underlying foundation that has crumbled? For Eric Weinstein, an avowed atheist, the answer is surprisingly specific. He argues that without a Christian substrate, Western society is doomed. He claims our entire way of life is based on its assumptions.
You're heir to a great tradition. One of the most important traditions in the world has to be Christianity, because both Judaism and Islam are screwed up over the law. We're legal traditions. Christianity, not so much. I think the first time somebody crystallized that for me was Sam Harris. It's a really important point. But you're heir to an incredibly powerful and important tradition. And if we don't have a Christian substrate, we're in real trouble because all of our society is based on an assumption of a Christian substrate.
If we do not have a Christian substrate, we are in real trouble. This is a fascinating and troubling conclusion to his worldview. After spending hours detailing conspiracies by secular institutions like the government and science, he lands on a religious cultural solution. He dismisses Judaism and Islam as being too screwed up over the law, positioning Christianity as uniquely essential. But Eric also knows which way the wind is blowing in these podcasting spaces. We've seen a parade of influencers and intellectual dark web figures suddenly declaring themselves born-again Christians. It's become almost fashionable in these circles. And perhaps this is the inevitable end game when you actively spread a fire hose of falsehoods to the degree that you no longer believe in anything. You eventually reach for the oldest, most traditional foundation you can find. It is a strange and reactionary endpoint for a journey that began with secret space technology and executed physicists. So there you have it. A world where nothing is as it seems. Where every institution is a lie, every scientist is a potential victim, and every critic is a government agent. This is not just a collection of quirky ideas. It is a complete worldview. A worldview that is immune to evidence because all evidence is part of the plot. It is a narrative that centers the storyteller as a persecuted genius. And it tells the listener that their anxieties are not just valid. They are proof of a secret war for their soul. It is exhausting. And it is dangerous. Because a society that trusts nothing can build nothing. And a public that believes it lives in the Truman Show will eventually just stop trying to change the channel.